Good morning, friends.
Dear friends, we are on our way to that fair land where the soul never dies. Thank you, Brad, for leading that song and for starting our worship off with the thoughts of who we are and where we're going. It was very encouraging to me. I hope it was an encouraging song of praise to you as well. We're going to talk a little bit this morning about being friends, and I'll say that as I put this on the board behind me, there might be some of you in this room going, Kyle forgot what building he was going to today. What are you talking about with the word sacrament? And I want to talk a little bit about this idea of friendships and what it is. And I think as I reflected on the things that I'd prepared, sacrament was a word that came to mind. That we have a blessed relationship and it has a purpose. And so that's what I hope to try and draw out this morning. We'll begin just answering this question to get us started. What is a sacrament? Because we typically think of that as, oh, that's something that the Catholic Church uses. It's a word that the Catholic Church uses to describe things that are very necessary, important, and sometimes they don't make as big a deal out of as we do. That's not at all what the word means. It is a highly religious word, and it comes from the concept of something that is happening outside of you that reveals to others spiritual truths. It is sometimes described as an outward action that instills heavenly grace, and it comes from Old Latin words. The first one being sacramentum. And you might understand why the Catholic Church has opted to refer to baptism as the sacrament of baptism, because it is a solemn oath. If you don't think baptism is a solemn oath, we need to study together, because that is exactly what you're doing. When you are being baptized into Christ, you are making a vow. And thus it is referred to as being a Christian, is referred to as a marriage. It is referred to as taking and becoming a part of the bride of Christ. It is a solemn oath. But it all comes from an older word that's even harder to say. Sacrar. It sounds like a tiger, right? So that just simply means to make sacred. And therefore, I'm going to say that from now on, because saying sacrar, it just feels weird. So it means to hallow something. It's similar to the word that Jesus used when he gives his prayer. And he starts it off to the Father saying, hallowed be thy name. Your name be treated as sacred or holy. What I want to think about today is this idea of friendship. Is it a sacrament to us? Does our friendship communicate that? Does our friendship communicate that we have this concept of making solemn vows that are focused around things being sacred and holy? That's what I hope to be able to communicate through our lesson this morning. And what I hope to accomplish in this, I hope to accomplish making all of the young people that are here, all of our youth, I hope that you'll think about friendships, but not just you. I hope that the young adults that are here, I hope that you young men and women think about this as well. But not just them. And I think sometimes when we start doing lessons like this, we start talking about friends, we start talking about things like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we start thinking about how it applies to these youth, and they have great lessons to learn for it. But husbands and wives, you need to learn about friendship. And those parents with children, you need to learn about friendship. And the elderly and even the eldership needs to learn about friendship. This is something that I hope impacts every one of us here, no matter what stage of life we are in. I hope that we'll be challenged to be more diligent in developing sacred friendships as we think about this idea. Now, I know I've mentioned it once or twice, but I'm a fan of C.S. Lewis, and he wrote this great book called The Screwtape Letters. And if you've never read that, I encourage you to take a moment sometime and sit down. It's not a hugely long read. Ryder has read it. He loves it. It's a short read. Go and read what he has to say about how evil wants to shape the way that we act, the way that we see the world. Because in this book, specifically in chapter 3, he takes some time to show how Satan wants to control the way you see the relationships around you. That's something that is important to Satan, That's something that is important to him, shaping the way that you see the people around you. In that chapter, he's going to specifically talk about a mother-son relationship. But it is something that pours out into all of our lives, and we can, I think, recognize it and experience it. And in that chapter, he really gives 4 things, but I'm going to try to sum them up in this phrase here. We don't want to be people who accuse and excuse when it comes to our relationships with others. And what does that look like, and what do I mean by that? Well, there's a sense in this book where Satan comes off a little bit like a sleazy car trader. Like he's this sort of, you can see the guy, I think of Matilda. You see Danny DeVito's character, Matilda, he's got his hair slicked back and he's ready to pull the wool over all these schmucks' eyes and really fool them. Satan kind of comes off that way. He's got this line where he says, you know what? Murder is not all that important to us if we can get them with cards. The idea is, if I understand I can secure this person's soul for hell with something small instead of something great. And he challenges us, Lewis challenges in the book, the readers to think about how we might not go, oh, I don't want to be friends with with the president of the Church of Satan. By the way, there is a Church of Satan. But the guy that runs that, we go, I wouldn't want to have friendships like that. He says, you know what? That's like that big end of the spectrum. Like, oh, this would be really bad to have friends that don't glorify God, but instead they try to bring honor to our adversary. He says, we can be in just the same boat. We can be in just as much danger if we allow pride or we allow maliciousness to shape the relationships that we have with people who are trying to glorify God. And so the book tries to lean us towards that. The chapter that I'm referring to tries to lean us towards that. And this idea of accusing and excusing kind of shows up in our lives as we tend to look inwards. We look at the lives that we live. We look at what kind of friend we are being, and we go, you know what? I maybe don't get it all perfect, but I try really hard. I do a good job. But you know what everybody else is doing? They're all failing. They're not doing a good job. And so you see this idea of accusing and excusing in that, right? That I am going to look at how I am as a friend and just kind of sort of smooth over and sand out all the rough areas, but I'm going to bring the microscope out and I'm going to focus in on the ridges that are in the people around me. And we're so good at that. We're so good at examining everybody else's faults, but not looking at ours clearly. And it manifests itself very well in our prayers. I'll give you an example. We might pray. We come home after a hard day's work. Husbands, you come home after a hard day's work, and first time you're coming into contact with your wife, and the point of contact does not go well. And you say something to her, and she quips back, and then you have this little sort of scuffle of words, and then you go off to your room, and maybe you pray a prayer like this. You say, God, give me patience towards my spouse. I've had a hard day, and I'm sure she has too, and I don't think she meant to be so unkind, so help me put on a strong face so that she will repent and that she will turn away from her unkindness. When in actuality, maybe what we should be saying is, God, forgive me for not being more sacrificial for my wife. And give me the strength to get off my knees and the strength to get up and go work in her life right now to set the example of Christ in her life at this moment. Sometimes our prayers become one-sided, and they just tend to focus on how other people are acting and how other people are wrong, instead of recognizing what we are, where we have fallen short, and petitioning God to move in our lives that His glory would be seen through our actions, as opposed to just trying to constrain everybody else through our prayers. We also can recognize that this becomes very vivid when we reflect upon what really offends us. And oftentimes what really offends us are just things that really annoy us, and we start amplifying them and making them bigger and bigger. There's a line that Lewis uses, and for those who have been married, you probably are going to relate to it, When two humans have lived together for many years, it usually happens that each has tones of voice and expressions of face which are almost unendurably irritating to the other. And there is this concept that sometimes what sparks off a cycle of slander, just words going back and forth that are unkind and unfair, and even sometimes volleys of retribution, where, okay, you did this, I'm going to do that, and we're just going to jump back and forth on each other. A lot of times where that comes from is just assuming what something means or supposing the conclusion. And we'll say it like this: I saw the way that you looked at me. I heard how you said that. Like, I heard your tone. I heard what you really meant when you said, fine. I know exactly what that means. And all the while, we have this sort of plausible deniability about ourselves. We have a hypocritical double standard where we say, I know what that face means, but if they were to return, say, I saw how you looked at me, we'd say, well, don't judge me by how I look. Don't listen to my face. Listen to my words. We'll say, well, I heard your words and the tone in which they were used. And we say, well, that's not how I meant them. Quit being so sensitive. Quit being so quick to judge me when we have been guilty of doing the exact same thing. And in all of that, we accuse others while we excuse ourselves. And you know what? If you're a married couple, you might be going, yeah, I see where that's probably true in my life. But you know what? If you're one of our teens here, maybe you can see where you've experienced that as well. That is something that is true within all of us. In fact, there's this phrase that is really gaining popularity right now, this idea of church hurt, that I have had past trauma from the church. And you know what? When we really step back and we look at that, I bet we'll see these very same things there too. That yes, there are people that don't treat us right, but we haven't always acted right either. And so we need to always be slow to think and not just accuse everybody at the same time while excusing our own actions. So how do we do that? How does the Bible teach us to be better biblical friends and not just continue on in this cycle of worldly friendships? I think the Bible does give us a couple of thoughts. I want to share a few of them with you this morning. The first one is this: true biblical friendship is not about taking, it's not about receiving, it's about what you give. And there's a couple of places that I think show that very clearly, and we can see it especially in this concept of giving love from John 13. John 13, verse 34, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. And by this all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Jesus gives this very unequivocal statement. We think of things that are similar to some of other Jesus' teachings, but the teaching that he gives right here stands above all other belief systems. The creator of heaven and earth, who has made himself nothing. When I say that, we think, well, he just became man. He became a fetus. He became nothing and grew from nothing into a carpenter's son. Again, he's still just nothing in a world filled with competition for who's going to be the greatest. He is one of the least, and yet he comes revealing himself as the Son of God, as the Messiah who's come to save. And what does he do? He washes feet. He washes the feet of those who are following him. And he says, listen, you know what real friendship looks like? You know what real relationships look like? It looks like giving love, as opposed to just being focused on how you're going to receive it, how others are going to give that to you. He even goes on to say in chapter 15, if you turn over just a couple pages to verse 12, this is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. And then he tells us a little bit about what he's going to do. He gives us some foreshadowing. Greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for his friends. And again, we might think of that, and we know what he means by that. We know where that's going. That's going to culminate at the cross. But it is overarching. It's a dome that we set upon our relationship that says, am I laying down? Am I giving? Instead of trying to take, instead of trying to receive, instead of trying to manipulate, instead of trying to persuade everyone to be in the relationship how I want them to be, am I just focused on giving into the relationship everything that I am? Am I laying down my life for this? We are giving love in our relationships. As we grow together, the way that we handle each other, the way that we come up against and our lives intertwine with one another, let us make sure that those are constantly depicting the love that we have, that we are just standing ready to pour into that relationship. And when we think about accusing and excusing, how can we not think about love covers a multitude of sins? When we're giving love, it's not focused on what you have done to me. It's still focused on what can I give to you. But we can also give more things besides love. We can give an equal opportunity for growth. We can give equal opportunity for sharpening. Proverbs 27:17 speaks about that, about how we sharpen one another. As iron sharpens iron, we are to be constantly, I use that idea of sanding, of knocking down the rough edges. When you think about what sharpening is, like the picture that Solomon uses in the Proverbs, it's not a cozy, comfortable thing. It's something that happens in the forge of fire. It's something where metal is shaped and with being heated and then beaten into a shape, and then it is some sort of abrasive is used to take off the burrs and take off the nicks until what you're left with is a honed edge. And then they will take that edge and they will get it they will get it super hot again. They'll heat it up, and then they're going to quench it in fire. There's nothing about it. I said fire. Quench it in oil. There's nothing about it that's like, oh, this is just a walk in the park. This is not comfortable. And I think we oftentimes want to be on the side of that where we're the one holding the hammer. We're the one doing the sharpening. But the picture that he uses there is not, like a forger sharpen one another. He says, as iron sharpens iron, as two blades are scraped against one another, the discomfort goes both ways. And that we recognize the purpose of that discomfort. So even when things aren't going exactly as we would hope they would go, we look at those opportunities as a chance for our rough edges to be knocked down, but also a chance for us to work in the lives of our friends, to sort of knock down their rough edges as well, so that in the end we both share this edge that is sharp, this edge that is able to be used for a purpose. And I think that's another thing to consider as well, is that we can give from what we have learned and how we have been shaped over the years into this purposeful person. We can give that by giving the wisdom that we have received through that. We can apply our wisdom in ways that helps the relationship grow. And you know what? That's true of you guys. You all have learned wisdom that you can share with one another as you go. But it's really true of the elderly of this congregation, that you have been through child rearing, and you have been through marriage and brought it to a place where we can look at you and say, how'd you do that? How'd you get there? Because it sometimes feels like we're never going to get there. How'd you get there? And you can provide that wisdom to us. And I'm going to say that we need that. In our friendship with one another, we need your wisdom. We need to be open to it as well. For those of you who are not in that position, we need to be ready to receive it. Sometimes we look at the elderly and go, they don't know what it's like for what I'm going through. They live in a different age. We need to hear their wisdom. But you know what? We need you all to know that as well. We have an amazing, I'm sorry, Mickey. We have an amazing class on heaven out here. But sometimes we need you all to go, there's guys back here in a parenting class that probably would be happy to hear what I have to say. And you know what? They would be happy to hear what you have to say. And so maybe trying to juggle that some to recognize I need to be able to give wisdom to the friendships that I have, even the friendships that don't look like the same culture and society that I raised in, but they are still bound together with this idea that we want to give from one to one another. We want to share with one another. True friendship focuses on what it can give. But true biblical friendship also focuses on the idea of inviting others in. And there's something really special about Revelation 21, verse 25. We have a song that comes from this, "The gates swing outward never." And the idea in Revelation 21, 25 is that there are gates in heaven, but they are open, and they never close. Now, the reason for that is because all things that are sinful, all abominations, all things that harm, all things have been done away with. Like in that picture of the eternity of heaven, God alone reigns. There is no more the kingdom of the power of the world. That Satan has been fully defeated, and all those who follow after him have been defeated. And so there is no worry for people coming in and bringing pain and hardship and sin into God's kingdom. And so there's gates, but they're just entrances. There's no way to close them. There's no need to close them anymore. And our friendships need to reflect that. And there's a couple things we need to think about in light of that. One, we need to recognize how God is described in that same way. You know, sometimes I think we think of like Hebrews 12. Hebrews 12, verse 29, our God is a consuming fire. And we might think about that in the sense that fire devours, it licks up. That was the word that the prophets used when Elijah calls down fire onto the altar after the prophets of Baal failed. The fire came down and it licked up, it devoured all the water. And you know, the Hebrew author could have said that. Our God is a devouring fire. But he chose the word consuming. And for all my Spanish speakers, you recognize right away, con means with. That God brings things into that fire with him. And it is the similar idea that things are being devoured, but they're not being destroyed. They're being brought in. They're being made a part of. As the fire grows and as it reaches out into other places, those things become a part of. They become consumed by and join into the fire of God. Our relationships should mimic that. But we also have to temper that with passages like 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad company corrupts good morals. And so when I say that our friendships invite others in, they invite others in who want to be biblical friends as well, who want to give instead of take, who want to sharpen and help become an image of God with one another. And if there are those that decide we don't want to be a part of that friendship, we don't want to live under those concepts of what a friendship is, then there is wisdom in saying then maybe we don't need to bring that person into this relationship, or maybe we have and we need to distance ourselves from them. But the grand picture of friendship is one that invites others in. But you know what? If we're fair and if we're honest, we're not usually keeping people on the outside of that friendship circle because we recognize they don't want to be good, godly friends. A lot of times we're keeping them on the outside of that circle because they do something that annoys us. Or maybe they have done something that hurts us. Or especially we have nothing in common. They like things very different than I like them. And so what do? We form our cliques. This is the clique that is a little circle of friendship that has these qualities, and if you don't have these qualities, you stay on the outside. You don't get to come in. And I'm not here to tell you that cliques are sinful. I'm here to tell you that cliques completely dissolve the relationships that you could have with the people who are even in the cliques. And I don't think we think about that very often. That if I form a clique, just me and Luke Harris, I'll pick on him for a minute. Just me and Luke, it's our clique. Everybody else has to stay out. It's just me and Luke. We can grow so much, but the true picture of our friendship is completely eroded because I can only activate so much of Luke. There's only so many aspects of Luke that I can bring out of him. But when we bring Miss Jenny Pruitt into the relationship. And so now our friendship is me and Luke Harris and Jenny Pruitt. Jenny Pruitt can bring characteristics of Luke out that I never could. And so I have a whole new relationship with Luke because I have invited another one in. And then We have Cody Humble, who comes into the group as well. And now Cody is bringing things out of Luke and out of Jenny and out of me that never could have been brought out by the others. And our relationship is growing in a way that we never knew possible, because we're following the example of God, which says, I invite people into me. I want this relationship to be filled with others. Cliques become a selfish way of saying we're shutting the gates, and this is all that can come in, and we'll never really know what we could have had. But a biblical friendship opens those gates up and says, look, if you're here to be a true biblical friend, if you're here to give, maybe you're not even here, you don't even understand fully how that is that you need to give. Maybe you are here to take, but you're open to be sharpened. You're open to have the rough areas knocked down so that we can work on that together. And as we work on that together, we're going to grow more into a friend that gives as opposed to a friend that takes. If you'll be a true biblical friend, then you are welcome in my relationship. Because that friendship right there is the least jealous of all the loves. A relationship like that says it's not about just me and Luke and me holding on to that relationship and not sharing it with anybody else. It's saying I can't wait to share that relationship with others so that it can grow and so that I can grow and we can be even greater. That's a throwing away of fear. And sometimes isn't that not what behind our cliques? Is I'm afraid that if if Luke spends too much time with Hunter, Luke might not be my friend anymore, and so I want to try to keep this. No, we throw away our fears. Or we throw away our pride. It says, look, I don't know why you would want to be friends with anybody else. Am I not enough? Isn't that what Hannah's husband says? Am I not enough? We throw away our pride, and instead we ask, what could it become? What could our relationships be? And how could they glorify God even greater if we open the doors? And when thinking about that, I didn't mean to go ahead and put it up, but it is up. Our biblical friendship that gives instead of takes and that invites others in, it's all about evangelism. And that shouldn't surprise us. Isn't that not what Jesus said in John 13? By this, by your love, by your giving of love to others, by that relationship that pours love into the other, all the world will know that you're my disciples. He's telling us that very thing, that this is all about evangelism. When we give instead of demanding to get our way, and we do so unfettered by the restraints of division and party and sect, our friendship is available to all who want to be godly friends. We're communicating to the world that we're different. We're not like the rest of the world. And you know what? I don't think we always see that. The world thinks that it has a friendship that is far better than anything that we offer because it is free of intolerance. In the world, you will find those who say it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you've done. I will accept you. I will allow you to come and be a part of me. We are open and we are inclusive. And it is a lie. It is not true. It is a deception that comes from the father of lies. Because Satan wants the world to think that that's what they will find. Satan wants the world to think that you will find equality. And Satan wants to think that even though we are all different, we will coexist in harmony. But you know what you find? You find parties. You find people that will say, you know what? I know I said that if you don't think like me, if you don't act like me, that's okay. But there are parts about you that I will not tolerate, and that we will not have this relationship. And unless you come and be a part of us, you're not truly welcome with us. And we can see that, especially when our belief system and the world's belief system come up against one another. You can see that. But let me ask you, can you not also see that in your friendships? With your neighbor who does not think like you? With your neighbor who does not believe in God and does not live a life that glorifies the Father? With your neighbor that is completely okay with same-sex marriages? With your neighbor that is championing that women should have the right to give an abortion? Do you not sometimes model friendship with them the very same way that the world models friendship? We would do well to think about Romans chapter 5, in which we were clearly shown not to be good, godly friends. And we can't be in a relationship with God because of that. It's not a question of whether or not God should open the doors and let us in. It's that we cannot be in a relationship with God because we are so different. We are so sinful. And at that moment, he didn't say, well, because you don't think like me and you don't act like me and you don't have the same plans as I have and you don't want to do the same things that I want to do, that we just can't have a relationship. Is in that moment that he lowered himself and he gave the life of his son on the cross so that we could be brought into that relationship. When we go to our neighbor who thinks differently than us, and they know that, because we do have a relationship where we've talked and they say, well, I think it's ridiculous that you go to church on Sundays believing in this guy that 2,000 years ago raised from the dead. Nobody raises from the dead. I think that is so stupid. But then they fall and they get hurt and you're there on their doorstep with meals and you're there to offer them help. And you're there to show them that, you know what, we are not the same, but I'm still going to give to you, and I'm still going to invite you to come into this relationship where you can be shaped by God who shaped me. And they say, why are you so different? And we say, because he is different. Because he died for me and made me a friend. And I want you to get to know him. Our friendships, the way that we think about being a biblical friend, is evangelism. So let's end thinking about this. If we want to be biblical friends, we need to know a little bit more about the greatest model of a biblical friend. I think there is a sense where sometimes we might learn a lesson or two from those who have imaginary friends. Those that at a very young age, they kind of craft this person that to them is just, maybe they get them through a hard time, a hard spot. They become that source of comfort whenever they're afraid. Or, we might even have that friend that's like, yeah, I got a girlfriend, but she's in college. You'll never see her. Or she's from Canada. I met her at camp. Y'all don't go to that camp. You're not, yeah, that's my girlfriend. Or that guy that's like, I've got a famous friend. I've got a friend that's a celebrity, and we all really are like, did you maybe cross paths with him sometime, maybe at an airport or something, and you're just being a little bit, you're leaning a little bit too much into it. But then you find out that they do have a friendship because he invites him to come and he comes to services. And look at the ones that turned around. Wouldn't it be cool if I could have made that happen? Wouldn't it have been so cool if I could have made that happen? But then we talk about our friend Jesus. And people have the very same thought. They go, yeah, okay, you got a friend Jesus. Can't see him. Supposedly lived 2,000 years ago, died, and came back to life. We don't know that. How am I to know that? John 15, verses 14 through 15. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you slaves, for the slave does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all things that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. Yes, we have a friend, and we can have a friend in Jesus. That relationship can be fixed. And we don't always think about him that way. We think about him as Lord. We think about him as King. We think about him as Creator, as Judge. But he tells us when he comes and he lives on this earth with us, he says, you know what? You can be my friend. And maybe people sometimes take this and run the wrong way with it. What sort of friend comes up and says, you can be my friend, but you got to do everything I want to do? Like we tell our boys that. Your friends come over. Don't just, ask them what they want to do sometime. Don't just assume they have to do everything that you want to do. But that's not what Jesus is doing here. When he says, you're my friend if you keep my commandments. He's doing the very same thing that you recognize when you look at the world around you and you say, we can be friends if we are going to walk in the same path, if we're going to be headed towards the same place. How can two walk together unless they are in agreement? You know, if one of you wants to walk north and the other one wants to walk south, the relationship's going to be hard to continue on. He says, if you want to walk with me, we will be friends. And what is the commandment that he immediately gives them? Well, we just read it earlier. It's love. If you want to be my friend, then model your friendships after the friendship that I'm extending to you. And you know what? When you do that, as we've just pointed out about evangelism, your imaginary friend, your friend from another country, a heavenly citizen, your famous friend that everybody thinks you're probably just over-extenuating the relationship a little bit, he does show up. He shows up in you. And everyone gets to see exactly what he is capable of. Will you be a friend of Jesus today? If we can assist you in that. He talks about following his commandments. If we can assist you in that, we'd encourage you to think about some of the commandments that he gives beyond just loving one another. He calls us to believe in him. He calls us to submit our lives to following him and his ways. Part of that is by surrendering ourselves to be washed by him in baptism. Maybe you're here today and you're realizing, I have not been a friend to Jesus because I haven't done any of the things that he has called me to start following him and walking in the path that he's walking together. We would love to help you change that today and begin your friendship with Christ. But maybe you're here recognizing, I have claimed to be a friend of Jesus and we have begun walking that way, but I don't live like a friend to Jesus that the rest of the world can see. And I'm ready to start showing that in the way that I treat others, in the way that I think, in the way that I act. I need to come back to him. I need to recenter this friendship on him. However we can assist you in those things, let's talk about it together right now as we stand and sing.